The klaxon cut through the night like a blade. Inside the dimly lit barracks, boots pounded against concrete as soldiers scrambled for their rifles. But in the corner of the room, one figure stood empty-handed. Her name was Elena Torres, a logistics officer assigned to the base, hardly considered one of them. "Stay back, Torres," one of the men sneered, yanking the rifle from her rack. "You wouldn't know what to do with this anyway." The others laughed as they pushed past her. In their eyes, she was just an organizer, a paper pusher, someone who made sure fuel and supplies were tracked but had no place on the line of fire. She had been told that so many times it was almost a chant, "Not a fighter, not one of us, stay out of the way." Then came the sound that froze everyone mid-step. Gunfire. Close. Too close. The intruders had slipped inside the perimeter. Shadows moved fast through the hall, and within seconds half the barracks was cut off by smoke and muzzle flash. Soldiers raised their rifles, but chaos ruled, and training scattered like sand in wind. Elena was shoved aside. She stumbled unarmed, her gear stripped, her presence dismissed. But she didn't run. She watched the shapes moving in the haze, the infiltrators, 6 of them, coordinated, professional. They swept the barracks with brutal efficiency. The soldiers around her were shouting, firing wildly. None of them noticed how Elena's eyes narrowed, how her body shifted, not with panic, but with calculation. "Get down!" a young private screamed at her. "You'll get killed!" His words died in his throat. Because Elena moved. No rifle. No body armor. No gear. Just her hands. She closed the gap to the first infiltrator in a blur, twisting low, wrenching the weapon from his grasp with a move so fluid it looked rehearsed 1,000 times. The man collapsed with a choke before he hit the floor. The second came at her. A step, a pivot, an elbow driven into his sternum. He went down, gasping for breath he could not catch. Within seconds 2 shadows were silent at her feet. The soldiers froze. Even the infiltrators hesitated. Who was this woman they had dismissed minutes earlier? And then she turned toward the next 4. Her eyes were steady, her movements quiet but unrelenting. She wasn't fighting for glory or recognition. She was simply finishing what needed to be done. The barracks erupted in shouts, half awe, half disbelief. 90 seconds. That's all it took. 6 trained infiltrators, each armed, each ready to kill, lay scattered on the floor. And Elena Torres, unarmed, stood above them. Breathing steady. Hands still. Eyes unreadable. The silence that followed was heavier than the smoke still curling in the air. The soldiers who had mocked her just minutes before could only stare. Elena hadn't always been the invisible one. Years before, she had been known in a very different circle. Born to a family that struggled through every season of scarcity, she learned early that survival wasn't just about food and shelter. It was about strength. Strength not to dominate but to endure. When she enlisted at 18, no one expected much from her. She was small, quiet, unassuming. The drill sergeants overlooked her, the cadets underestimated her. But Elena had something they didn't see, an instinct sharpened by necessity. She absorbed everything, every technique, every tactic, every lesson. And when others were at the mess hall or asleep, she trained alone. She never bragged. She never showed off. She simply prepared. But life had a way of redirecting her path. An injury during training, nothing dramatic, just a fractured wrist that healed slower than expected, pushed her into logistics. From then on, she was dismissed as support, valued for paperwork, not presence. At first, she told herself it didn't matter. She could still serve. She could still contribute. But the whispers followed her. She's soft. She's not one of us. She doesn't belong in combat. Every word cut, but she learned to let the pain carve deeper resilience. What no one knew was that Elena had never stopped training. Every night, when the base quieted, she found space to move, practicing throws, joint locks, counters. She had no rifle, but her body was her weapon. She remembered her instructor's words, "A fight isn't won by strength. It's won by awareness, timing, precision." And though they laughed at her, though they mocked her hands for holding pens instead of rifles, she kept her silence. Because silence was her shield. And silence, she knew, could one day be her strength. The days leading up to the infiltration had been filled with the same routine: drills at dawn, inventory checks, endless whispers behind her back. Elena walked through it with her usual quiet grace. She noticed things others didn't: the way the new recruits cut corners, the way fatigue settled into the soldiers' shoulders, the way tension rippled through the base like a storm yet to break. She logged it all in silence. There was one moment, though, that marked the shift. During drills, when she stumbled intentionally to avoid showing too much, one of the SEALs barked at her. "Drop the act, Torres. You're just here because they needed a slot filled. Don't pretend you belong." The others laughed. Elena looked at them, her gaze calm. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She simply bent down, picked up her dropped helmet, and said softly, "I belong more than you think." They didn't understand the weight of those words. That night, Elena sat alone in the empty gym, the echoes of mockery still clinging to her. She breathed slowly, deliberately, letting the rhythm of discipline wash away the sting. She wasn't angry. Anger clouded judgment. She was patient. And when the infiltration came, when chaos ripped the barracks apart, her patience ended. Her body moved with the precision of someone who had been waiting for this moment, not to prove herself to others, but to prove that dignity doesn't require permission. After the fight, silence lingered. 6 infiltrators lay unconscious, restrained with improvised ties. The barracks smelled of gunpowder and sweat, and the soldiers who had mocked her stood frozen, rifles dangling useless in their hands. Elena didn't gloat. She didn't demand recognition. She simply checked each downed man for weapons, ensuring no further threat remained. Her movements were calm, methodical, almost detached. Finally, one of the SEALs broke the silence. His voice was hoarse. Where did you learn that?" Elena looked at him, eyes steady. "I learned to survive." No further explanation. No grand speech. Just truth, delivered with the simplicity of someone who owed nothing. Words spread quickly across the base. Some retold it with awe, others with disbelief. But all agreed on one point: the woman they had mocked, the one they had called soft, had saved them when their rifles failed. In the days that followed, the tone shifted. Soldiers nodded respectfully when she passed. Some even asked her, quietly, to teach them. Elena never sought status, never claimed the spotlight. She continued her work in logistics, filing reports, managing supplies, moving quietly through the rhythms of service. But now, when she walked into a room, silence carried with her, not the silence of dismissal, but the silence of respect. She had shown them that dignity doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits, quiet and unassuming, until the world leaves it no choice but to rise. And when it does, it leaves a mark no one can erase.